Pests beware, your fields have heroes. The Pests and Predators podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and is powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca today.
Welcome to The Truth About Ag. Welcome to the Truth About Ag podcast, distributed under the Real Ag Media Network and powered by the Hebert Group of Companies. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and watch whenever you get your podcasts. Also, quick shout out to Farmer Coach. New registrations for November are open. Join the revolution at farmercoach.ca. All right. We are going to switch it way up today. Instead of talking federal politics, we are pulling it back provincial. So just to throw a wrench in things. So today we got Dustin Duncan on the podcast. I would give you the Chat GPT line, but you know what? I'd probably rather hear it out of your mouth. So give us a bit of background, Dustin, and I guess your journey from where you started into politics and then where you are today.
Yeah, no, thanks, guys. Long-time listener, first-time caller, I think is what they say. So glad to be on. I grew up in southeast Saskatchewan. Was raised in the community of Hebert. If you're on 39 highway between Weyburn and Estevan, we're pretty much right in the middle. And small farming oil community, about 100 people when I was growing up there. Have family still in the area that work in the oil industry, and my wife's from that area as well. So kind of grew up in that area. And went to university in Regina, got a degree in history. Not a lot you can do with that. But I always thought someday, politics is kind of where I wanted to end up, either on the staff side where I started or maybe someday elected. And had a really great opportunity to work in the legislature for about a year and a half. And then got elected in 2006 and was reelected by my constituents up until deciding not to run in this last election, and now kind of transitioning into the private sector and then in a way back into the oil industry. So that's a pretty quick snapshot of kind of my journey so far.
18 years in the industry and Minister of Health, Environment, Education, Energy and Resources, and Crown Investment Corp. That's a longer resume than most that we have on the podcast. Let's be fair.
Well, in a lot of ways, I was just really fortunate. Like, timing is everything in a lot of things. And so, I worked in opposition when Brad Wall became leader of the opposition after the 2003 election. I was heading out of the province. I had accepted a job with the Royal Bank, in a kind of a broker trainee program. And my wife and I, we were married already at the time. Been married 25 years now. We were all packed up. We were ready to go, and waiting to find out if we were being stationed in either Calgary, or Red Deer or Lethbridge, one of those two smaller communities. And a buddy of mine that worked in the caucus office, he was going to go back to school to do a second degree, and said, "Hey, I know you like politics and you want to do something like this, so why don't you apply for my job?" And we literally were packed. We were just waiting to find out where we were going, and so I did. I applied for the job, got the job, did that for about a year and a half. And then in 2006, the MLA for the Weyburn area, who was a Saskatchewan Party member, who I worked for, I campaigned for in the 2003 election, Brenda Backen, decided to resign her seat. And we were living in Regina at the time. And I'll never forget, I won't go into it's kind of a long story, but I'll never forget where I was when I got a call from a good friend back home who said, "Hey, the seats opened up. We're going to have a nomination and you should run for it." I was 26 years old, right? I was, didn't know. I knew a lot about kind of the political system because I was, political nerd or junkie, but, didn't know a lot about life or myself or, those sorts of things. So anyways, ran for the nomination in I guess that would have been May, I think, of 2006. The by-election was June. It was, so I won the nomination, and then the by-election was on, again, I'll never forget this, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, Edmonton Oilers, Carolina Hurricanes, and was elected that night. And very fortunate to serve under both Brad Wall and then Scott Moe, and fortunate that they, put a lot of trust in me to serve in some pretty important roles over those years.
So I guess, Dustin, let's, if I remember correctly, your dad, is he a lawyer and kind of does a lot of work in energy? And then obviously in your time in government, you were an advocate for the natural resource sector. And you've kind of slid your way back into a pretty cool private operation, the Day Group. Just walk me through, your desire to maybe go back into private and the parts you really like about it. I obviously, for you and your wife not being in the public eye for a few years probably makes life pretty fun, but walk us through that.
Yeah. So, first, my dad's not a lawyer. He's a truck driver, but he works in the oil industry. In fact, he's not on a truck anymore. He's more on the management side. But he is with the same company that he started with 49 years ago. When you grow up in Hebert, Saskatchewan, most of the kids I grew up with, your dad either worked for Dempsey Laird Trucking, which is where my dad works, or Carl Brady. At the time, it was Carl Brady Trucking. It's subsequently been sold. But it was a truck driving town. That's what most of the parents did. In fact, for most of my upbringing, my mom also worked for the company. She was kind of an after hours dispatch, kind of a receptionist when the office closed and an operator needed some fluid moved at midnight. There was two ladies that had phones, company phones in their houses. My mom was one of them. So our little desk in our kitchen in our house in Albright, we had three phones. We had our home phone, we had a business phone, and we had a CB radio. And so the sounds of the oil industry were kind of always present in my growing up. And so, coming from the Weyburn area and representing Weyburn and kind of coming from that background, and having not just my parents, my dad, especially in the oil industry, but my grandpa was a cat skinner, built leases for that was his career. My uncle's a co-owner of a oil field construction company. My brother works in the Patch and Medicine Hat. He's a lead safety transportation guy for the company he works for. So just lots of cousins that are in the industry as well. So, it really was kind of my background. And so to be able to be energy minister for a year, was certainly a position that, I was certainly grateful to be able to have and hopefully to be an advocate of not just the industry, but my friends back home that still work in the industry and that's how they make their living. And that's how our community grows. You look around a community like Weyburn or smaller communities like, Carlisle and others that, there's probably not a hockey rink or a community building that doesn't have a company name on it or a family name like the Day family down in Cardiff. And so, now, decided after 18 years, and I was in cabinet right from the first cabinet shuffle of the Wall government in 2009. I went into cabinet and I stayed until basically a new cabinet was sworn in. So that was 15 years consecutive of being in cabinet, and I'm 45 years old. So, I was a cabinet minister for a third of my life, which, super grateful for the opportunity, but it became time to do something different and not really any one reason. We have small kids, young family at home. We have three kids, they're all under the age of 11. And, this life can kind of take a pretty heavy toll on family life. And we were getting into some pretty important years, especially our two older kids are boys, and, just wanted to be really present, in their upbringing. And, the other thing too is the things that I wanted to do for my constituency. I was really able to check a lot of boxes. So, we're building a new hospital in Weyburn, Highway 39, which has been for years, on everybody's top of mind to have some improvements. We're doing passing lanes and twinning on that, and a new health center in a community like Radville. So, it wasn't really one reason. It was just things just kind of aligned, like it was the right time. And then so kind of after thinking what was next for me, I had talked to some companies about doing a bit of consulting or kind of government relations work, and wasn't in, a real big rush, but was getting pretty close with one of them for sure. And, And that's when Dennis reached out to me. And it's funny because I really didn't know Dennis personally. I knew who he was from the oil industry. And, I think in 2019, he was awarded the Southeast Oil Man of the Year at the Saskatchewan Oil and Gas Show that Weyburn hosts every 2 years. And, I was there for, I can't remember if I presented him with the award, but I was certainly there. Like, there's pictures of us together. But like, we didn't know each other to the point where like, I didn't have his phone number. He didn't have mine. And he reached out to me and wanted to, through LinkedIn, it sent me a message and said, "Hey, I'm going to come up to Regina. You want to go for lunch?" And I thought, well, I'm unemployed. If you're buying, like, I'll go for us. And at the lunch, what kind of turned into, I thought I'd be there for an hour. I think we were there probably 3 hours, and the restaurant was closed, getting ready for supper, but they let us sit in the back of the restaurant. And that was a Tuesday. And I think by Thursday, we had come to an agreement. So, really great opportunity to, really for me, I really didn't think staying or getting into oil and gas was really going to be possible here in Saskatchewan, just because a lot of the jobs that, my experience and skill sets are really geared around, most of those are in Calgary. So I really wasn't thinking like this was going to be a possibility, and moving to Calgary wasn't really an option for us as a family. It's not something that we really were interested in. And so, I had kind of pretty much closed the door to, working in the industry. And when Dennis came and approached me, it just, he really put things on the table that I didn't really think were possible to ask. And it's just a really great opportunity to work with a, family-owned group of companies that are really community-minded. Anybody who knows Dennis, he's an aggressive guy, and so like there's no shortage of things to do, and an opportunity for me to get to know their businesses and figure out kind of what's my role and what am I best suited at. So I couldn't I just I'm probably 2 months into it and I'm still kind of pinching myself that this is what I'm doing.
Sounds like when I hire people around here, Evan, like you and Depp, where if there is a job, here's kind of the description, we'll figure it out together, but things are going to change so fast it won't really mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll give you a Cole's notes of what's going to happen, and then we'll go the exact other direction is essentially what it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we'll have Dennis on one day too. I know Dennis pretty well, and I still go back to COVID when Dennis was on the front page of one of the papers, right? His first time he ever kind of laid anybody off his entire life was COVID. And he'd went and bought a whole bunch of co-op gift cards to help the families out with groceries. And then, no, Dennis, for a number of reasons and different businesses. And then it's always been, from the outside looking in, it's been fun to watch how, he kind of saw that COVID was the icing on the cake of some of the slowdown in the energy. But what he did is just diversified his group of companies so that he could keep all these great people, right? It's Dennis is someone I look up to lots on how he deals with people and just tries to surround himself with good ones. And I forget which one of the billionaires said it, but he wasn't wrong, right? You hire smart people and get the hell out of their way is a pretty good way of life.
Yeah, for anybody that doesn't know that story, it literally was like tens of thousands of dollars of gift cards. And like just a really, and I get it too, because like a lot of the people that he was, laying off for the first time were people that like from not just his home community, but like probably people that he went to school with. Right. So like hit really close to home. And so, for him and the family to step up that way, was just, shows the kind of people that they are. And that's the kind of people that I want to be around.
So what, I know there's only certain stuff you can share, cause obviously it's a private business, but in today's world, give us a couple of the interesting projects you're working on.
Yeah. So, I'm in a cooling off period, here in Saskatchewan with the provincial government. So, part of my job, will be, looking at, legislation and regulations and, other things that we would like to see changed that would, help our businesses or help the industry as a whole, because it's not just our business, right? And so a lot of that's limited right now in the cooling off period, but, we're operating in Manitoba, in North Dakota. And so, just a couple of projects that I've kind of led on my own is, for instance, we're fairly new in the North Dakota business community. And, the way that it works in North Dakota is their state legislature only sits every second year. And so 2025, the spring 2025 was is the year that they were sitting. And so, I just mentioned to Dennis, hey, look, you're fairly new, you've only been down in kind of that south of Williston, Arngard, Alexander area. That's where the shops are located. Have you guys ever met the state reps? There's 2 state reps and there's 1 state senator. There's also, pretty influential North Dakota Petroleum Council, kind of an industry stakeholder organization. They carry a lot of weight when it comes to legislation and regulations. And, so I said to Dennis, like, if you guys haven't met them, I have a background in politics, we kind of speak the same language. Why don't I go down to Bismarck and just spend a day down there? And, didn't have an agenda, wasn't looking for anything specific, but it was more just, this is who Dennis Day is. This is what our companies do in your area, how many people we employ. We just want to be good community citizens, want you to get to know us, want us to get to know you. And so, we've been down there twice now. We went a second time. Dennis came down last week, and just kind of the same thing. Just try to introduce ourselves to the business community, to the kind of political people that are down in North Dakota. So that's one area that I've done some work. Dennis is getting involved in the CAOEC, so the Energy Drillers. They used to be the Oil Drillers Association, based out of Calgary. So I've been sitting in on some of the meetings for him, just on when it comes to issues that they're trying to get their head wrapped around when it comes to like road permits and things like that. So, also looking at some regulations in Manitoba. I can deal directly with the Manitoba government. My cooling off only counts in Saskatchewan. So, there's some regulations that we're trying to kind of work through with our companies that are based in Manitoba. So just doing a little bit of research and kind of giving a bit of advice on, here's where we may be able to see some movement on some stuff. So those are some of the things that I've been doing so far.
Hey, Hebes, shut your camera off and turn it back on. I'm sick of looking at your frozen face.
I don't know if I can even do that.
There's got to be a camera button there.
No, I can't even click on I've closed out everything on my computer. I can't even put down the Google anything. I'd have to control delete it.
Okay, Dustin, we're looking at his frozen face for most of this. So I want to pull you out of today, and I want to go back a bit into the government side, because that's obviously where I don't know a lot about you, Dustin. So I guess for me, like from a leadership standpoint, which is kind of where you're the advisory role with the companies, is what did you learn as a cabinet minister across obviously all those portfolios in terms of like a leadership role and in terms of running as a minister?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me, because in pretty much all of the portfolios that I had, I wasn't a subject matter expert in any of them. So, first and foremost, and the way our system works, or typically the way that it's worked under both Brad Wall and now Scott Moe, is like, to pull the curtain back a little bit, you literally find out the day before you become the minister that you're going into that portfolio. So like you find out, but you can't tell anybody. The next day you get sworn in. And then the next day you show up at your new office, which isn't your old office, because that day that you're at the government house getting sworn in, there's people in the building that are packing everything up and they're moving you to another office. And you basically go into an office, a brand new office with brand new staff, and, 3-inch ring binders like this high, and start reading, because like you're now the minister. So, I think for me, really what I learned is, and I tell this to school kids whenever I meet with school groups, is being a minister or being elected, frankly, as an MLA, it's a lot like being in school, because you're learning about something new every single day. Either somebody's going to walk off the street and come into your constituency office, or you're going to get a briefing from a ministry official, or you're, going to meet with a stakeholder, and you may never have heard of that issue before or the details of it before. And so, part of it is just really becoming a good listener, getting as much information, being curious, being pretty honest with yourself about what you don't know, what you do know, and kind of knowing when to shut up and when to ask questions. I was pretty well known for, with my officials, I think I was known for this, is not being afraid to ask some, what I think a lot of people would say were pretty stupid questions. But for me, it was just like, I need to get my head wrapped around this issue. So, I think that's a big thing. It's just you're going to learn something new. And so you got to be pretty open-minded. People are going to have different perspectives and different opinions. And at the end of the day, you gather as much information as you can, and you're going to make a decision or recommend to your colleagues that together you make a decision. And the other thing too, and how I ended up in politics is it's kind of an interesting thing because I think I would say I'm a recovering people pleaser, and politics probably isn't the place to be when you're a people pleaser, and because you're not going to please everybody on anything. So
that question's coming. Don't worry, Dustin. Let's pause the truth about ag to go into financial acumen. We are facing high cost of production, volatile markets. Come work with Maverick Ag. Why would you come work with Maverick Ag, Hebert?
I'm a big believer in doing what you're good at. And so if you don't want to spend time in the details specifically of your financial management and financial acumen, then you're better off to partner with somebody. Run your farm, grow your crop, raise your animals, whatever your specialty is, and have a high level knowledge of the financial side. But let somebody work with you to get into the details and let you know when debt service is getting close to offside, what your cash flow is doing, and what months you're going to be tight so that you can run the farm the way you want to be, as perfect as possible.
If you want someone to help you deal with the banking regime or look at your next equipment deal, reach out to Maverick Ag. That's maverickag.com.
Oh, you're going to leave me. I'm going to do it then.
Yeah.
So I guess how do you manage the pushback? I mean, whether it's in today's age, whether it's social media, whether it's in public media nowadays, it doesn't seem like there's any stop to it. So how do you mentally control it, and how do you get around it, I guess, being a figure essentially, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think over the years, for me, I was I'm a late adopter to pretty much any technology. So like I was late, like I never to this day, I don't think I've ever had, I think I had one Facebook account, and that was one that the party set up, and I used it in maybe the 2011 election, and I posted 3 pictures on it. And after the election, never posted again. I couldn't log into it today if you showed me how. But so I've been a late adopter to technology. I was late into Twitter. And about 10 years ago, I was probably on it for a couple of years, and I was pretty active. But it got to the point where like, I just can't do this to myself anymore. I'm reading the comments. I'm living and dying on every single comment. And I remember, I think it was, we're a big baseball family, and our oldest, he was like a newborn. And I remember posting something like on a week, I don't even know when it was, but I know I was the Minister of Health, and I posted something about, I think we were actually watching, might have been like Derek Jeter's last baseball game or something like that. And I posted something like, watching this, whatever baseball game it was with my son. And I was the Minister of Health at the time. And I remember I got a reply to it. It was something like, well, that's great. I've been sitting in an emergency room for 9 hours. And I just thought, like, you just can't win, right? Like, so, I went off Twitter. I didn't delete my account. I went off Twitter for about, I think it was like 100 days straight or something. And then I went back on, and about a month later, I was like, I can't do this. So I had to do it. So I mean, you just, you got to kind of learn to, be pretty selective in kind of the media that you do follow. I think for me, one of the strategies was really trying not to follow media myself, but as a minister, you have staff around you, and so it was really, if there's something important that I should know about,
they'll let you know.
Yeah.
Hebert, what about you? I mean, you get a lot of the public perception as well. And I don't want your direct answer, but what's your way of dealing with it?
What do you mean? I'm not allowed to say that my give a shit dude is zero?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, I have social media accounts besides Twitter and LinkedIn. Half the time, the majority of the time, it's not me checking them. I've approved everything that goes on them. So, I mean, if it pisses anybody off, it's probably my real opinion. But Facebook, I actually think Facebook's the devil. I hate it. But there's 3. I mean, I also like to see the positives and everything. And I think Facebook's been great for being able to sell stuff, right? Facebook Marketplace, even on the farm, is an amazing tool. I think keeping up with old high school and college friends, I like to see that their kids are doing great in hockey or baseball or dance. And these are people that in today's world, it's super hard to catch up with. And then I don't know about anybody else, but like most of my kids' stuff, they share it on Facebook, whether or not a baseball game's on or not. So you kind of have to have a little bit of monitoring there. But yeah, I mean, I'm more of a Twitter and LinkedIn guy. I'm kind of the same as Dustin, though. You decide what you're going to comment on or not. I got reasonably thick skin, so the comments don't bother me too much anymore. But I mean, let's be honest, it's one of the reasons I was thinking, geez, we should have Dustin on the podcast, because I had a LinkedIn post this week where I had a blog come out that basically said, I want to believe that Carney can be a good prime minister. There's no question. He is way less awful than what we had before. And then I was pretty frustrated with his ag minister post. And the reason I say that is I actually, people within my network have done a fair bit with Cody Blah at the time, who was the minister of ag, and believe that he had the passion to do a pretty good job of it, even though he's from the East. And then magically he got replaced for another minister from the East that really has no background in agriculture, nor, in my opinion, has a little bit to prove to the industry that he cares. And so then the comments started coming in pretty hard that obviously it's my fault, or our faults, because there's no Liberals elected in Saskatchewan really, other than one from the north. So who else are they supposed to pick? And anyway, it turned into some pretty funny debates. And so Dustin had made a few comments. So yeah, I think we could tailor into that, in that, I mean, Dustin, the one thing I find interesting in politics, right, is I'm sure there would have been individuals in the other party that you had a lot of respect for and that you thought were pretty good at their job. And I mean, I go back to say, I'm a pretty big fan of the job Paul Martin did as prime minister. I think Jack Layton was a great politician for the NDP, and somehow we have to get back to that, where we find the respected individuals on both sides and move forward. Because Jesus, right now it's frustrating to watch things on both sides of the border and within the country of a whole bunch of pointing fingers and not much moving forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, here I signed up to LinkedIn because I thought, well, I'm moving into the private sector and this is more of a business forum, and I'm in the one that's probably jumping in too much on the political stuff. So that's on me. No, I think the frustrating part, and why I felt kind of compelled to add comments to your post, Kristjan, was just, I just the frustration, not even in what the actual post was about in terms of, once again, an ag minister, and, I think the number is about a fifth of the Liberal caucus is from west of Ontario. So how hard did you really try? I think it was more that, just the signal that it sent. And, in fairness, I think there have been some pretty positive signals, and it's a signal. So, take it for what it is. But even hosting all the first ministers in Saskatoon.
Yep.
Hasn't been done in 41 years in Saskatchewan. Good signal. Whether anything comes of it, who knows? But it's a great signal to send. Yep. And there were some other ones too. Some of the and kind of back to on the energy side, some of the positive comments on energy projects and resource development and pipelines. And then you get a Guilbeault who opens his mouth on an issue that isn't even his portfolio, and has to say something public. And it's almost like, and it's still fairly early days, but I think it's just a frustration of, it seems like, we get one step forward, but then one back. And, I think there are I give credit to people like, he's no longer there. He didn't run again, but like Seamus O'Regan. I had a really good working relationship with him. Newfoundland, Liberal cabinet minister, was very bullish on the nuclear industry kind of before, this was right up into the lead of COVID. So nuclear was kind of, starting to become more acceptable, like globally, but it still wasn't where it was even where it is today. But give credit to Minister O'Regan. He was very much a champion. a champion for Saskatchewan's uranium industry. So, you know, there's lots of good people on all sides of the political spectrum. But it just, you know, when I think the West, especially right now, we're in probably more than anything, we're just looking for those signals. Whether or not you actually come around and come to the same policy positions, you know, that's time will tell, but at least give us the signals. And, you know, in this one, I think is one that they miss.
Well, and I find it's an interesting concept because, I mean, Cody goes in as ag minister. He does the agri stability discussion. And honestly, 90% of the posts on social and stuff are slamming that it's not enough or it's the wrong thing. And it's like, guys, Cody's was a good alternative to this. And at least he came up with something, and we still trash him because it's not our party. So I think part of it is we got to figure out what we actually want, because now we end up with one that, I mean, Haney said it the other day, there's a steep learning curve now. Well, I think Cody was halfway up that curve, and now all of a sudden we've taken 2 steps back. So I think even in the West, we have to decide how much we're going to just keep fighting this, or we're actually going to try and move forward to, like you said, take more than 1 step forward before we go backwards, right?
Yeah, especially a steep learning curve on a portfolio that very important out here.
Yeah.
But, you know, around the cabinet table in Ottawa, how much attention does it get? And how much attention does the bureaucracy get? And, you know, I've never been in that portfolio here provincially, so I wouldn't have had direct dealings, but, you know, so that's more of an outsider take. But, you know, it's one thing to, you know, be in a portfolio where it's maybe not the top of mind one at a national level, and then to have to start over again with a new minister that, you know, as I said before, he's going to be up to his eyeballs in briefing binders.
Yeah. In a time when I think
the reason, you know, the reason people had, you know, some faith in Cody was that, I mean, I don't know the exact scenario, but I'm pretty sure he voted against the carbon tax part, which showed that I'm not saying that's his personal belief or not, but as the ag minister, right, you're supposed to represent farmers, and obviously the majority of farmers across Canada think it's detrimental to their business.
Did that for
so that was go ahead.
Is that the reason though that we no longer have him as an ag minister? I mean, not to throw shade on it, but let's be fair.
But I think that's where Dustin, I like the word signal, right? Cody gave a signal that, you know, I am here to stand up for farmers and what's best for agriculture. And you're right that currently, until proven otherwise, the signal back is that, you know, maybe he wasn't going to completely buy into the overall view of the current leadership, and that's maybe why he's not there. And that's me completely just guessing, right? But all we can do right now is guess based on signals, because we don't have enough time with the government to actually see what they're going to do. So now it's just the waiting game that everybody struggles with. And I'm the same as you, Dustin, and that frustrates me for how important agriculture is. That, you know, I've always said we need to somehow have like a super ministry of natural resources, energy, critical minerals, and agriculture, because we agree on 80 to 90% of stuff, right? Like when it comes to trade and infrastructure and all of those types of things, you know, we might disagree on the price of natural gas. I kind of want it low and energy kind of wants it high, but that kind of stuff, that's just the way the commodity market works. But somehow we need all 3 of those industries to be rowing in the same direction and to learn from each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess my one question for you is, I mean, obviously, like we've been talking, there's a pretty direct line between farmers in general, and especially Western Canada, and our current government. So like, what have you seen over time? I mean, you were part of this for 18 years. How did that relationship change from when you started till today? Like even in Saskatchewan, I would argue that there's starting to be a bit of a divide between the farmers and or even our current government. So give us that play by play, I guess.
Yeah, you know, I think I think one of the things that we've always tried in Saskatchewan, I think it's easy in Saskatchewan, because, you know, for the most part, we're, you know, geographically a big province, but we're pretty, you know, we're pretty connected. And so, you know, there's never really, in my experience, there's never really been a difficulty. And, you know, I hope certainly this is a perspective from the outside, but like getting a hold of your local MLA or getting a hold of a minister, you know, and I was able to facilitate some of my constituents being able to, you know, meet directly with the minister, including the Minister of Agriculture's, both, you know, we've had several in our 18 years. And they've been very receptive to meeting with constituents and meeting with producers and having that open dialogue with producer groups. And I think that's such a big thing. I know it's harder at a national level, right? Because there's so many more demands for a national minister, and nationally agriculture is probably a bigger basket of a sector than it say would be locally here provincially in Saskatchewan. But I think that dialogue with stakeholders and individual producers that are living the life on the ground is so important. And so I think that if that's any advice that I could give to either government or to producers is, don't be afraid to at least try to get in the door. That's the biggest part is lots don't even think they can, but actually you can. You can get a meeting. It happens.
Hebes, you want to comment on that same thing? How you think that relationship's changed? I mean, you took over the farm in 2009 and a whole bunch of different government changes over that point. And even federally, if you want to talk about the divide there, the split.
Yeah, like I think my opinion changed too, is that, I thought it was probably a pretty typical average producer that I just stuck my head in the sand and assumed everything would kind of work out for the industry and I should just do my job of farming, right? And then I have obviously started doing a little more work in that area, but it's like Dustin said, is that I started to see some success of just actually taking the meeting or setting one up. And not just with the ministers, because they do come and go. Like some of the most important things are the key bureaucrats that are doing the work in that shop, because some of them tend to be there for quite some time and are super knowledgeable or would be the experts on that piece of the industry. Some of the best BRM talks I've had are with some of the bureaucrats in Ottawa that have been in that desk for a long time. So I think it's just two pieces, right? You want the people within government to spend more time understanding, but we in the industry also need to understand how government works and where we can add some positive, I don't want to use the word influence, but positive advice and boots on the ground knowledge of what's actually going on. Because that's the part that they're missing. I mean, it's no different than if, when you went into a brand new ministry, like you said, you had all your briefing books because you weren't an expert on it, and it took you a little while to get up to speed on what's going on and what the industry actually needs. And that's our job, is to help make sure that knowledge is getting there.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things that I tried to do as a minister, and I think it's helpful, is you can be briefed by your officials anytime you want. You have your staff pick up the phone and say, "Can you come over at 2:00 today and brief the minister on this?" Ministers, it's also helpful though to pick up the phone to a producer that you might know and say, "Hey, my officials are telling me this. What do you actually think? Like, is this, and it's not malicious to think that, that your officials aren't giving you the straight goods or the right answer, but, like one opinion can develop naturally within the bureaucracy, within government. And that may not translate exactly on the ground with the producers. The other big thing that I'll say that I saw a change in terms of the ag industry, and I see it with you guys right now with your hats, right? Like the branding of your business and of what you do. That's something that you rarely would have seen when I was first elected, where, and I think of like guys back home like LeGuise or Riley Richards and, guys like that are, not just kind of building their brand and standing on that brand, but also, like they have their social media accounts and they're being more forward in terms of, and that's helpful for like ministers, maybe not me, because I got off Twitter 10 years ago, but like lots of them do, lots are pretty active on social media. And so they see the posts from the field and they see the posts about kind of, what's going on the farm on any given day. And I think that's been a big change, that, just that kind of, that ownership or branding that a lot of you guys are doing right now is really, really, really awesome.
I can vouch for that too, Evan, right? Like some of our updates on where we're at on seeding, et cetera. You sandbag a little bit, but it never fails when we do an update on how seeding's going, et cetera. I'll get 2 or 3 texts in the next couple of days from some of the people in government just checking in, how, posts look good, how are crops coming, was the rain too much, And exactly what you said, Dustin, is that a couple of, here's an issue I'd like to talk about. Here's kind of the 2 points on my briefing. Just what's your opinion on it? I know you're close to this subject. And it, like you said, it has nothing to do with they don't trust what they're getting. They're just trying to round out the opinions, because when they make that decision, they prefer the least amount of unintended consequences, the better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll give you another example, and I don't know if other ministers have done this, but I know when Dave Merritt was ag minister, like I'd get a phone call from Dave or a text, and he'd say, it'd be during harvest, and he'd say, just want you to know, I'm in your constituency. I'm going to ride around in a combine with, I think in the one case, I think it was Louise, and, I'm going to ride around for an hour with them, and I'm going to go to this farm tomorrow, another constituent, just want you to know I'm in your constituency. I'm just, but as ag minister, I want to be on a combine, and I want to be there, listening as they're literally taking the crop off, and really, really good opportunity for him to hear directly right there, right then.
We're probably going to have to wait a while to get the new ag minister federally on a combine, but I could be wrong. Going to pull you away from the podcast here to go into Farmer Coach. We have opened up the registration for November. Brand new courses, the executive, the foundations. Hebes, why would you come to Farmer Coach?
Yeah, I think 2 quick points. The first one is just a baseline knowledge around farm management, right? From accrual statements and debt service ratios to human resource policies that we've seen work on operations and businesses kind of around the world. And secondly is just knowledgeable peers. It's not just what you learn, from the coach and being in the program. It's what you learn discussing with 10, 15, 20, 25 other operations and what's worked and not worked on their operations. And I think those 2 pieces are pretty invaluable.
With more than 90 producers having gone through the course, you have an online platform. It is probably one of your largest peer groups you can be a part of. So sign up, go to farmercoach.ca, and we'll see you in November.
Well, and I mean, that's the interesting part though, right? Showed in why we're lucky that way in Saskatchewan. Merritt used to farm, Harrison used to farm. I mean, Warren Kading in charge of Ted right now is one of the better farmers I've known in my life, right? He's phenomenal. But it once again, and this got posted on LinkedIn too, is that good ministers don't have to have a background in that exact industry if they're surrounded by good people. And Dustin outlined that at the start, right? Is that as long as they get up to date on the file and get subject matter, experts, and in my opinion, the big thing for this new minister is to build out a network of trusted people across the country in the industry, and not necessarily just through the normal party channels. This is the way I'm going to learn that, and I think he can do just fine, right? So that's, and I mean, Amy had him on the podcast there or on the show, and Haney would be a good guy to reach out to for some opinions on agriculture, right? Haney stays pretty up on policy. So I think that's the key part, is that ministers can do great jobs without actually growing up in that industry. It's about building your team out, no different than in business. Have subject matter experts and have a network of advisors that you trust their opinion and that they're trying to do the right thing for the industry.
Well, and I think he's going to face the same problems that past ministers have and not to throw anybody under the bus, but we've got a lot of groups in agriculture from different diversifications, and they're all asking for something different. So I think, again, we need to find a common message here to get to him, rather than having 300 different messages and him not being able to figure out which ones are more important, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I mean, you guys both know me. I mean, the blog, you can't write a blog that doesn't get any opinions or nobody looks. I'm still the first guy that if the minister reached out and said, hey, I want to come to the farm and bring a few of my staffers and understand, or, would you come to Ottawa in the next, they're only going to sit for 3 weeks, but would you come to Ottawa and meet with a few of my staffers, and then in the fall we'll come back out? I'd be the first guy to say yes. I don't care that it's the Liberal Party. I care about agriculture, and I care about our farm, and I care about every other farm that's in it. So, was I a little critical in the blog? Absolutely. Just pointing out the obvious. Would I be the first person to say I'd help if he phoned out and reached out? Yeah, I would, right? I wouldn't say no. I only talk to conservative ministers. No, that's not the way it is. I was in Ottawa prior to the election and met with the deputy minister and his whole team, and met with Treasury and Privy Council too, all about agriculture. Because the industry's got to move on no matter what party's governed, right? And so that's the joy of being able to write a blog and get a few comments. And same thing, if I got the call, for sure, I would tell him the same opinion I would tell every other minister that phoned, because you want the best for the industry.
Yeah. So I got another question for you, since obviously Hebert's running for politics now. So I guess what advice, Dustin, would you give someone who's actually looking to go into politics? Much like you said, growing up, you'd actually had that thought. What's your number one advice of someone who wants to go into that?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, get involved. Like every candidate needs a team around them, and that's everything from the parts that a lot of people don't like to do, like the door knocking, and that's not everybody likes to do that, but you need door knockers, you need fundraisers, you need people just be around you that you can phone to say, hey, that an MLA or a candidate needs to bounce ideas off. So there's, I've never come across somebody involved in politics that doesn't want more help. So first and foremost, just get involved, find out what it's like. That's one of the best ways to kind of be around it without being in it initially. And part of it is like finding what your role is. Like, not everybody wants to be elected. Not everybody, when they get elected, find out that that's not actually the path for them, but they still want to be involved in somehow. And so whether it's being on, executive councils and of parties or constituency associations, every MLA has a constituency association where, it's a group of 10 or 12 or however many people that provide advice and run meetings and things of that nature. And, there's no shortage of opportunities. And like I said, it's just, finding what the best role, what the best fit for you is.
And then if I ask you, what are you most proud of? I mean, you got 18 years as a whole bunch of different ministers. Give me your one moment that you're going to look back on and say, you know what, I did that, or I made that change, or give me something.
I think from a constituency level, the biggest thing when I got elected was a new hospital in Weyburn. And so, the doors will open up probably early 2026. And, that'll be something, because, that's hospitals.
Local.
Yeah, it's local. It'll be there for a long time, and it serves a need for the community. So that'll be one. I think as a minister, things like, when I was education minister, the Sun West School Division had the Distance Learning Center, online school. And, we made a decision as a province, and I was the education minister at the time, that we would make that a provincial school, so that kids, regardless of where they were attending, whatever school division that they were in, they could take an online course. And, there was a lot of, it was not without controversy within the school system. But, they were doing such leading things like the Ag Tech program. There's now an oil and gas program that's run through now it's the SDLC. That's one that I think is going to be a game changer for a lot of kids that might not have had that opportunity just because they didn't live in the right part of the province. So that's one I'll be proud of. But there's so many on the constituency level where, people walk into your office as an MLA and, they might, when they come into your office and they have an issue, sometimes it's a federal issue and you say, you got to talk to the MP, and sometimes it's a city or an RN issue. And, sometimes they need a lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't provide legal advice. And sometimes people just needed somebody to talk to, and there wasn't maybe anything that you're really going to do about it. And so I have lots of memories of those one-on-one encounters with constituents where you think to you or I, it's not really a big deal, but chances are if they're walking into your office, it's the biggest deal. It's the biggest thing going on to them. And, so lots of whether we could help everybody or not, but, being able to, be a voice for people in some pretty tough situations. It's an incredible responsibility, but a tremendous honor that people would, entrust you with those issues. So lots of things that, I think back on and proud to be a part of a government for a long time. And so those are some of the things that stick out.
Hebes, you want to give me your last question? I got one more after you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we could go on about politics forever, and so that's my problem.
Yeah, I'm trying to secure you. I don't want the bad comments.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go into fun stuff then. So the kids are 11 and under, and you're a big ball family. Are you getting to kind of live like you said your dream? You said you wanted a little more time with the kids. Are you coaching ball and chasing ball around lots right now?
Yeah. So all three. Our oldest turns 11 next month. Our middle child, the younger of the two boys, just turned 8, and our daughter turned 6, and all of them are playing baseball. We've been, like you guys, we've been rained out this last week, so we've been all kind of sitting at home waiting for the fields to dry up.
Yeah, that's a Southeast Saskatchewan issue. You got to keep that quiet.
Yeah, well, yeah, here in Southeast Saskatchewan. So, anyways, we're all three are playing ball. I'm not coaching. When we were signing up for ball, I still wasn't sure what I was doing, so I didn't really want to commit to coaching and then find out that I wasn't going to have the time. So I'd like to at some point, but we're all full speed into ball and really enjoying it.
My 13-year-old is seeing the positives in the rain because I wasn't seeing the positives. So every when we get a chance, which fairly often we get supper together, I like to quiz everybody in the family. What's the best 1 or 2 things that went on for you today? And he reminded me last night when his ball game got canceled that, Dad, I got pitched out on Monday. He threw his full 85 pitches, so he needed 4 days rest. So he wasn't going to be able to pitch it all on Wednesday. And because the game was canceled, the clock's reset. So he doesn't have to miss a game to pitch at least an inning or 2. And I was like, that's a pretty good positive, actually.
Where were pitch counts when we were kids?
They didn't exist. Oh, the next generation. Okay, so I want to end this with one more question for you, Dustin. Just back to the government side again. What are you going to miss the most? I mean, you're moving into private industry now. What's that one thing that you're just, every day I did it and now I don't have it?
Yeah, it's the people. Both the constituents, but the people that I got to work with at the legislature, the cabinet ministers, there's a few of them like Jim Ryder and Jeremy Harrison. We went into cabinet on the same day back in 2009. Really good friend, Scott Moe. Premier Moe has become a really good friend over the years. I grew up playing baseball and hockey, and I wasn't really good at either one of them. And I think I enjoyed being on the team more probably than anything. And so I really enjoyed that team aspect of it. And so I've made lifelong friends there, and, just not being in the day grind with them. It's, it can be a, pretty difficult job, but, when you're doing it with people that you enjoy working with, it makes it a little bit easier. And, you're there for interesting conversations. You kind of know, behind the scenes, what government's working on before really anybody else does. And it's always kind of interesting. I kind of miss not knowing what's going on as much as I used to, for as much as I used to know what was going on. But it's just, really being around the team is the biggest thing that I'm going to miss.
Final comments, Hebes?
Wow, I mean, it's interesting. As if anybody doesn't know, there's zero prep for this podcast. It's actually
that's why I keep pushing you.
Don't ask me 2 days ago if I was going to have time to do it. I texted Dustin last night to see if he could jump on today. So there's zero prep in the fact that the fact that you use a baseball and hockey analogy on why you're going to miss the team the most. And I mean, that's what we use all the time for how we try to build culture is like sports teams. It's kind of a different way to do things versus maybe some of the corporate ways, and that your team cohesion can outweigh skill sets. And I mean, Shout and I, we talked about this morning we had a different meeting we were on. And so you have one of the top 8 teams in the NHL is in the last 4 in the playoffs, and only one team in the playoffs has a $10 million man on their roster, which shows that the highest skill set does not always win. The best culture and the best team does. And that's the fun part of life is surrounding yourself with a good team and winning together and losing together and figuring out how to get back on your feet and win again. And so I found that comment pretty interesting.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on again. Short notice, Dustin, as he lets it out of the bag all the time. But we appreciate the candor, and obviously government, whether federal, provincial, seems to be in the spotlight. And I hope you keep commenting on the LinkedIn, because it gives Kristjan something to read at night before bed. But that's what we got, and I do thank you for coming on. So,
hey, thanks for having me, guys.
You betcha. And that is The Truth About Ag. Thanks for joining us. The Truth About Ag podcast is a proud member of the Hebert Group, which includes Hebert Grain Ventures, Maverick Ag, and Farmer Coach. We appreciate the support. Lastly, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you have questions for a future podcast, please leave in the comments below. Thanks for listening.